The story starts in the year 2030 on July 27th, a virtual reality game called The World of Yuan is launched. After some time passed by exactly on September 1st, the game became reality, granting players the abilities that their characters had in the game to the real life. Quickly those who had a high level reached the top of society. This caused fight for the power that plunged the world into a huge chaos. Now we meet our protagonist Liu Yi, who has never taken video games seriously. For that reason, he ended up losing his sister in front of his eyes, and also him because he chose to be a casual gamer. Being on the ground, our protagonist regrets his decision since he never thought that the World Yuan game has become the reality. Meanwhile, the people who were fighting the protagonist and his sister does not stop mocking. Angry, he tries to fight with all his strength, but finally, he is eliminated. Suddenly he woke up in his room 3 years ago. At that moment his sister Liu Yun appears with a new game. After asking for the date, he realizes that he actually traveled back in time, weeks before all the game disaster began. With a new opportunity, the protagonist promises that this time he will take the game seriously until he becomes the highest level player. With 34 days left until the game comes true, our protagonist gets to work entering the Gamito obtain key, a power that increments its abilities and the power from the weapons. This will determine if a player is of a higher or lower level. To obtain it, he went to a training room where he tests with all the weapons that he can, increasing his ability to 100% with each of them. A couple of players who passed by note the presence of the protagonist, but they only thinks that he is someone strange, since to reach 100% of each weapon, more than 10,000 blows must be thrown. 3 days go by and most of the players have reached level 20. While the protagonist is still number 1, the boys have returned to the training room a while ago, realizing that the protagonist continues training without leveling up. Even though it has reached the 5th day, the young man obtains the title as an expert in weapons that allow him to assimilate the attributes of any weapon he uses. When he sees that he still has not decided to train with firearms, but there comes a time when they think of surrender, although after remembering what would happen in the future, he continues with the training more. In the afternoon, the girl from a while ago called Ku Xian Yi decided to hide and see how the young man is doing. Realizing that he got with a great power, the protagonist decides to buy a couple of weapons to continue on his way. However, he realizes that the weapons cost too much money. Anyways, he ends up buying a dagger and a pistol for $1,000. Later we know the secret zone of the mirror. This was an arena for players where for a fee they could fight against a random opponent depending on their level and difficulty. When a player wins a combat, they will get many rewards, but if they lose, all their levels will be restarted. Some players who were resting in the place observe how the protagonist enters the combat arena with just very basic weapons. Trusting his ki, he chooses to fight against a level 5 opponent called The World Is Not Kind. Seconds before the fight begins, the protagonist begins to feel some fear as he remembers being humiliated in his past combats. His enemy takes advantage of the distraction to take away his weapon. Luckily, the protagonist reacts and regains his confidence, ending the fight with a cut of his dagger. When he returns to the lobby, the players from a while ago are surprised that someone of level 1 has won that fight. Quickly, one of them, Agui with white hair named Gongzi, he decides to bet on him for his next fights, but after placing his bets he is surprised seeing that the protagonist chose to challenge a level 10 player. He was one of the strongest level 10. The other players who saw the bet decide to put all their money on the protagonist's opponent in the combat arena. He still continues in fear, so he calms down in a very particular way. The fight starts and the player called Light Strokes makes it difficult for the protagonist since he repels the attacks and takes his weapon with the help of his katana. Luckily, the young man has his backup dagger in which he manages to connect an attack, but it does not do enough damage. In any case, he is not intimidated by that and launches the attack again. This time he dodges his enemy's attacks, managing to deliver the final blow, where we finally see that he overcame his fears of the fights, not counting that he went up to level 10 and got a good reward. In another part of the players who bet on the protagonist are surrounded by the other players due to Light Strokes. They were waiting for their pay since they took it for granted that the Light Strokes would win, but they are all left with their mouths open when they see the young man come out victorious. When he checks his statistics, Liu Yi realizes that he obtained new abilities that increase his life bar and also damage. Meanwhile, in the real world, his sister wakes him up for dinner. She had cooked his favorite food, but the young man doesn't even notice and eats as fast as he can to continue playing. This makes his sister think that the boy urgently needs a girlfriend. Back to the game world, one of the guys who lost the bet begs to be charged in half since he owes a fortune, but a proud Gongzi does not accept the deal until out of nowhere he is beaten by a redhead. This was the manager of the mirror character of the clan New Order called Chicken Crown. Theboi clarifies that he does not work with the protagonist, also he never thought that he would face Light Stroke. Chicken Crown tells him that he does not want his money but dosamething for him. Meanwhile, our protagonist learns a new ability called Garaki. Thanks to that, it increases his combat attributes, which means that despite being level 13, his power is equal to that of a level 26 player. Totus this strength, the young man decides to face a level 20 Light Stroke. Later we see that Chicken Crown bet a lot for the protagonist. Andy had asked Gongzi to promote the fight. At the entrance, the boy and his friends talk about the strategy that Chicken Crown has to dole of that. Anyway, Gongzi bets everything he has on the protagonist. Meanwhile, in the combat arena, there are a few seconds left until the confrontation begins. This time the light blows player has two katanas. Owner protagonist continue with his basic weapons. The challenge begins, but this time the young man is more confident. That is why in a few seconds he manages to catch and finish off his enemy by giving us to understand that he has not only become stronger but that he is now ahead of the majority of players in the betting room. Many players celebrate and promise to bet again on the protagonist. Here the friend of discovers that this was always the strategy of Chicken to make believe that Liu Yi is a really strong player. However, now that he has defeated a level 20 enemy, he will only be able to face level 30 characters that a large part of the players consider difficult to win. Although our protagonist does not think so, decided to enter to the confrontation. In the part of Chicken Crown, he is confident that his blows of light will win and that everyone has bet on the protagonist. Even himself on the battlefield see that this blow of light has very advanced equipment, and well, now we know how Liu Yi is. As soon as the challenge begins, the enemy drops almost all the life points of the protagonist in a few seconds. With that, he demonstrates his great speed and damage of the attack. Luckily the young man can heal himself and continues to be confident, since thanks to his abilities he can increase his hit statistics for a whole minute. Meanwhile, the players who are watching the fight support the protagonist, and others there are light blows. One of them mention that if he defeats his opponents, it will mean that he has great talent and soon he will become the superior player. Back on the battlefield, the young man admires his opponent's ability, although he realizes that anyone with 5 levels more than he could easily beat him. That's why he is sure of victory by giving him 25 seconds of his ability called Blessing. The protagonist launches the final shot, which makes him win the victory, causing the anger of Chicken Crown and the joy of Gongzi. In the reality league, he uses the money he earned in combat to invite his sister to dinner. Here we see that there are still 25 days to go for the world Joan to descend to reality. The next day the protagonist buys a mysterious product, which will arrive in 2 months. He despairs since it won't be long before the game takes over reality, so he has no choice but to keep turning stronger. In another place, Liu Yuan and her friend Huan Nian Chu walk calmly down the street. The protagonist's sister had asked to go out with her friend to see if she was a good option as a couple for her brother, but first she had to check that she doesn't have a boyfriend. Back in the game, Chicken Crown was taking it out on a girl for having lost to the protagonist. At that moment he received a call from a guy whom he had hired to find out Yu's address. Talking about him, he was in the combat arena where he decided to leave her since there were no more strong rivals for him. That's why he has the only option to go to the dungeons. Before that he decides to upgrade his equipment, but these are still priced remarkably high, seeing that entering the dungeons alone is not possible. The young man is looking for a group here. We discovered that the dungeons have a limit of players. The higher the limit, the better the rewards, although once those places are entered it is not possible to leave until they are completed. That means getting knocked out is the only way to get out, without completing the mission. but as we know, if that happens, all the players' levels would be reset. For that reason, people are very cautious and smart when it comes to recruiting a member in their team. With information in mind, he has to choose to enter a level 25 dungeon with a group of level 10 or a level 30 dungeon with a group of 5. But when it comes to looking for a team, the young man is rejected many times for not having good equipment and being from a low level. At that moment, a chicken crown appears clearly with something on his hands. He offers to enter his team to attack a level 35 dungeon called the Chaos Area, since he is missing a member to complete the group requirement. When Liu Yi meets his team, he realizes that it is made up of pure rich people, who have immortal class armor and even have a portal to transport themselves to the dungeons. When they enter the dungeon, everyone takes their positions to protect a crystal, since if it is damaged by the wave of monsters that will come, the life of the players will drop considerably, and they will lose in the mission. At that moment, the mobs appear and a large number of bug spider-likes try to destroy the crystal, but the team easily destroys them, while the protagonist stays behind them. Chicken Crown along with his partner, they intentionally let one of the bugs infiltrates, attacking the protagonist. Both has no problem eliminating it. After finishing off the first wave, the group has 10 minutes to rest. One of them congratulates the protagonist because it has defeated a bug almost 10 levels higher than him. For his part, the one who released the bug regrets not having eliminated the bug. They also offer him to join their team if the boy reveals his secret to becoming stronger. Chicken Crown sees this as a good idea. Although to be part of his team, they supposedly have to provide him with their phone number and address in order to contact him. He must also do the missions with them whenever they ask him, without counting on the fact that he will have to pass them all the equipment that he obtains. The protagonist says that these conditions are somewhat difficult to meet, although he reveals the secret of how he travels in time after being eliminated, and that this time he plans to become the strongest before everything returns to chaos. That is why he suggests the group join him to make them stronger. He also reveals that he follow the orders of the organization called the New Order. The one who had power when the game first came true. That's why Liu Yi offers his support to defeat his powerful boss. Chicken Crown doesn't think the protagonist is strong enough to do it, but he shows it by saying that he can eliminate all 9 of them at that very moment. Tired of hearing so much arrogance, one of them attacks the young man, but as soon as he approaches him, he is eliminated with a single blow. After disappearing, the player left an orb of loot that allows the protagonist to obtain a random item from the eliminated player when they see how the situation was serious. All the guys attack together, doing that is useless since one by one the players are eliminated by the protagonist until only the Chicken Crown remains. She remembers how his boss gave them his support to become the strongest, but he also told them that if they failed, severely punished. That is why he asks the young man not to eliminate him. In exchange, he will reveal some secrets of the world. Joan. Anyway, Chicken Crown ends up being shot. Although he manages to survive at that moment, the second wave is about to start. The redhead tells Liu Yi that he will not be able to finish the wave alone as he is level 28, even worse with the equipment of beginners, but he reveals that his attributes are equivalent to that of a level 56 player, in addition to the fact that he has the equipment of his companions. In this way he opens the orbs that give him powerful armor and a katana. Thanks to that equipment, the abilities are 3 times better than before. Angrily, Chicken Crown keeps insisting that still the two won't be able to survive the dungeon when the bugs appear. Each one eliminates them on their own. That the protagonist could regenerate his life points without the need for potions. That is why when the redhead runs out of potions, he ends up being finished off by the spiders. That moment it appears a message to Liu Yi that now, since all his team were eliminated, he will receive even more rewards if he manages to win the game. He also collects the Chicken Crown orb. He had 2 earrings in which upgrade the protagonist's main weapon, making it much stronger without counting in his combat ability. In the city, Chicken Crown arrives and talks to his boss, apologizing that the protagonist is too strong for some secret reason. Then he gives him a new opportunity to level up as well. He says that he will take care of the protagonist in the real world. Huan Nianchu says that his family is playing the world Joan. They even invested money in him. That's why they force her to level up every day, but she wants to play it her way. It happens to her to play at her friend's house, she gladly accepts as long as her friend can spend time with her brother. Meanwhile, the protagonist finds himself facing the third wave, thanks to his new equipment. The combat becomes easier. At that moment the level 35 spider boss appears, but the young man has no problem finishing him off with a single blow, winning the dungeon raid. Later in reality, the young man thinks about how convenient it would be if his sister could also play with him. Suddenly she appears with the device that her friend gave her to enter the game. She also informs that she will play with them. Although the protagonist is more excited about the game than the girl. If you like the video, please press the like button and also subscribe and comment.